Scott, can you
All right,
believe it's enough? Hello, I'm Brent.
And I'm Scott.
And this
is Strange Embers.
Oh, I guess that's what's gonna happen on when we do an early morning record, huh?
Yeah, I'm telling you, man, like, I'm starting to like them, but at the same time, I'm starting to not like them.
I'm a morning person anyways. I like to be a night person, but I'm a morning person, and I try to be a night person, and they don't mesh very well. Trying to be both.
See, I am both. I could go to sleep at 1 o'clock in the morning, turn around, wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and be like, good to go.
Oh, when I do that, yeah, I'm still good to go. As soon as I get up in the morning, I'm good to go also. But my thing is, when I try to be a night person, I'm just dragging and I'm tired. I'm ready to go to sleep, but yet I want to do something. But it's, yeah.
So South Dakota was a pain in the butt. I did find in Oregon, there's a place called Salem, not Massachusetts. There is a Salem, Oregon.
Never heard of that place.
Right. And I didn't know that there was multiple Salems. I only thought it was just Salem, Massachusetts, where the witch trials took place. There is some things in Salem, Oregon that do pertain to the witch trials. However, whenever I tried to do that, and I wanted to do the research on that, but whenever you try to research that, it takes you to Massachusetts, and I'm just going to save that for when we pull Massachusetts as a state. So I found one story in Salem, Oregon, that I really want to talk on. And that's all I've got for today. It's not a long story, but it is pretty interesting. How many do you have today?
I have two. I'll jump into one of mine before we do that. Let's go ahead and knock the wheel spin out.
All right, let's go on over to the wheel spin, and we're spinning. And we have Texas.
Now that one should be loaded down with places.
You would think, but as we've established in some other states, you never know. So, Brent, with me only having one, do you want to start off with one of yours, or do you want me to jump into mine and let you take the reins for the rest of the episode?
I'll go ahead and jump in. I'll get one, and I'll let you jump in.
All right, perfect.
So I'm going to start with the Pittock Mansion.
Is it a big mansion?
46-room estate.
Yeah, it's a fairly large mansion.
So the mansion was built in a French Renaissance style in 1914. Henry Pittock, he was a publisher and a newspaper editor. He started construction on this 46-room estate in 1890. So if that tells you how long it took to build this thing. Started in 1890. The mansion was built in 1914.
24 years.
The reason for the long build time on building the mansion is because Henry had an architect named Edward Folks. The building of this mansion started with hand-picked sandstone blocks that Edward picked himself. And because of the artistic nature of the way that he built this mansion, it took a long time to match its exterior the way that it was built. The interior was built the same way as well. Had luxury electronics, a central vacuum system. It had intercoms, specialty lighting, an elevator, and restaurant quality refrigerator. The mansion's interior, even with the things I've just mentioned, it also had artistic and hand-picked styles that Edward picked out as well while building this. So by the time the mansion was fully completed in building, Edward had become well known in Oregon's upper class circles because of this build. The mansion soon became a hangout for Portland's most wealthy people. Henry's wife, Georgiana, enjoyed her life in these wealthy circles.
Okay.
She also loved the mansion. She spent her time strolling around the mansion constantly. She had gardens all around the place. Her and her friends tended to the rose gardens that were there. And she even helped to create Portland's Rose Society, which had held its first rose show in 1889. Georgiana's love for roses also led to the creation of Portland's famous Rose Festival, which still goes on till this day.
I've heard about that, actually.
That was the creation, or helped be created, by Georgiana.
Nice.
She passed away at the age of 72. And with his wife being gone, he didn't make it much longer, about a year longer, and he passed away as well.
He died from a heartbreak.
Yep, that's what they say. As he died from a broken heart. She did die in 1918. Just 1 year. Yep, just 1 year later is when Henry died. Up until the Pittock Mansion remained in the family up until 1958, when Eric Lass and Peter Grantenbein, they parted ways. Both of these men were Pittock's grandsons. They struggled to keep up with the massive amount of maintenance needed to keep this mansion up. In 1962, the Columbus Day storm hit Oregon. It caused millions of dollars of damage to the Pittock Mansion. That's when it was decided that they were going to demolish the building. The city of Portland stepped in to save the home. The community came together and raised over $75,000 in just 3 months to be able to save the mansion. Soon after that, the city of Portland purchased the mansion for $275,000. And in 1964, the Pittock Mansion was made a historic site. And the reason they did that was because of how much the community loved the place and put in the effort to actually save it.
Yeah.
The mansion required about $8 million to completely restore it to its former glory.
Holy crap.
Right. And it is about 1,000 feet above sea level. So not only do people love the place for the actual place, for the mansion itself, it is also a bird watching place. Apparently there's a lot of rare birds that do come by there, and people will come by to bird watch as well. The mansion has also appeared in several movies as well. In 1977, it was in a film called First Love. And in 1982, it was in a slasher flick called Unhinged. So with a little bit of the history of the mansion being said, we'll talk about the ghostly aspect of the mansion. Out of most of the places that we normally talk about, it's some kind of vengeful spirits but any paranormal activity, the people that experience it say it's a very warming and welcoming experience. Some visitors have reported when they're there that they can smell overwhelming smell of roses. So they think that it's probably Georgiana.
Yep, that's what I was thinking too.
Moving around. They say that whenever they smell it, it's not like it's just something coming by, that it's a very sudden and very, very strong scent of roses will just appear. Near the north side of the mansion, people will hear the sounds of shovels hitting the ground outside as such, and a lot of people think that that's probably the ghosts of the groundskeepers, because just like Henry and Georgiana, the groundskeepers that lived on site, a lot of them actually lived and died at the mansion just like it was theirs also. This place meant as much to them as it did to Henry and Georgiana as well. Disembodied footsteps are something that's reported quite frequently. Windows opening and slamming shut on their own. And even a portrait of Henry is even seen moving around on the wall by itself.
Kind of like in the old Scooby-Doo movies where the eyes would follow you in all the portraits.
I was kind of thinking the same thing, like whenever I very first read that, but I don't know if they're talking about that or if they're talking about like...
Does the whole thing
Does the whole picture go askew or something?
Because, I mean, if the whole picture's moving, then my goodness, that ghost has a hammer and nail with it too.
Well, it's probably the askew one. There's also reports of apparitions moving furniture. That would be an interesting one to see. And moving decor room to room. A lot of people think that that's probably Henry or Georgiana 1, just rearranging stuff back to the way that they want it to be. And there is another apparition of a woman in a long gown that's reported being seen. That she just they'll see her go by and then she'll just vanish.
Do they have any idea who that one is?
They did not say. Huh.
One of those.
One staff member said she probably got the best scare that she had when she was there one night, and she went through turning all the lights off, and as she went to leave, she turned around and looked back, and when she did, all of the lights that she just turned off all came back on at one time. That would be a very interesting one to see.
Mm-hmm.
But that's it. That one's not a real long one. Not a whole lot to it.
At that point, Brent, what I would do is I'd go turn them all back off again and see if they turn back on.
I probably would too. Honestly,
that's probably what I would do. Or we take it a step further and let's go to the panel and flip the breaker and see if the breaker comes back on.
That's what I thought you was going to say, the first one.
Yeah. That was actually pretty interesting. I like that. I like those big mansions that have tells behind them like that. It's pretty cool. Like I said earlier, I've only got one, but it's pretty interesting. As in a lot of places, Salem had a designated hanging tree in the 1800s. And this place is actually called the Hanging Grounds. Let's see if I got a picture I can send you. That right there is the picture of the hanging tree. And that tree is still there today. If there were a place in Salem, Oregon, I'd have to say this would be the place. The place. It's on Lower Church Street and served as the town's hanging ground in the 1800s. I sent you a picture of the actual tree. That is the actual tree where they hung people. There were at least 4 hangings that took place here. One of them was in 1851, another in 1859, and 2 of them in 1865. From locals who live in the area, they say that some of the hangings were not justified, which is probably the grounds for why people are seeing apparitions and you're able to hear distorted voices of the dead. William Kendall is going to be our first victim. He was the first official hanging in Oregon's history. William Kendall and William Hamilton both had a long-running feud about their pigs, animals. Neighbors were expected to help each other out during the slaughtering time and share the meat. Both men claimed that the other stole each other's pigs. Kendall had a short temper and was generally not a good neighbor. Because of the feud, he refused to help Hamilton at the seasonal butchering. Locals often heard Kendall threatening Hamilton over pigs and other things. So one day, Hamilton and Kendall got into a fight. And on the day of Hamilton's murder, several farmer families had seen Kendall heading towards Hamilton's farm with a gun. He was later seen returning down a trail on his horse following a distant gunshot heard by many. No one had actually witnessed the murder, yet circumstantial evidence led the Marion County coroner to arrest Kendall on the night of the murder. The next day, a grand jury returned an indictment against Kendall for first-degree murder. The trial lasted a couple of weeks, and the 12-man jury adjourned for a half hour and returned a verdict of guilty. Kendall was sentenced to hang on April 18th, 1851, between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. A gallows was erected on the current corner of Trade and Church Street. Even for a small town, the public execution drew quite a number of gawkers. Kendall would maintain his innocence right up until the rope ended his life. Now, that was in 1851. Our second one's going to be 1859, which was a Charles John Roe. Roe wound up slicing open his wife Angelica's throat with a knife while she held her 2-year-old son. Roe was one of the earliest white arrivals to the Hudson Bay Post at Fort Vancouver in 1834. He stated that he murdered his second wife Angelica to keep any other man from enjoying her.
Wow.
Yep. His wife, prior to their marriage, had affairs with several men representing all colors and creeds. So this is probably what led to that. She was reported to be a beautiful woman. He did not try to escape from the murder site, quickly arrested and lodged in the New Brick, Marion County Jail. Roe confessed to the murder, and a trial found him guilty and sentenced him to hang. Almost 1,000 people watched his execution. Women and children were also in attendance.
That used to be like a thing when somebody was going to the gallows. It was like a family event.
Right.
Yeah.
You can wonder if his ghost now haunts the hanging grounds. A large knife dripping with his wife's blood, proclaiming his love for his wife and child to anyone he meets there. So we'll get to the last double hanging that took place on May 17th, 1859, which was George Beale and George Baker. The Double George. George Beale was a tavern owner, and Baker was his hired hand. They were both convicted of the murder of Daniel Delaney Sr. at his home south of Salem on Delaney Road. They had discussed several times a rumor spread around Salem that Delaney was thought to keep several thousand gold dollars in a keg underneath the floor of his cabin. The two men planned robbery at the Delaney farm, so this is premeditated. During the confrontation with Delaney, they both shot and killed him and attempted to kill his African-American son, Jackson, as well. Now, at the hanging grounds, people have seen at least 5 different apparitions. They've heard screams. They've heard babies crying. There's actually one instance where they saw a person hanging from the tree. But I thought that was pretty cool. There's been some investigations there, and they did pick up a lot of EMF stuff, but nothing really on any kind of EVP. Nothing on camera. It was more just a huge EMF field. But that's all I've got for Oregon. I thought it was pretty cool, pretty interesting. So what's your next one, Brent?
The Shanghai Tunnels in Portland.
Okay.
You ever heard of these?
I have not.
I did not either until I went into looking for something. So these tunnels are a 150-year-old series of tunnels that connect the basements of the city's oldest buildings back to the Willamette River, as well as connecting to Portland's Chinatown.
Oh, Portland has a Chinatown, huh?
They do. I did not know that. But I've never been over that way either.
I know New York has a Chinatown.
The tunnels were built by the Chinese workers during the time that the Chinatown was a center for trade businesses. The tunnel's original designs were meant for transporting goods from the cargo ships to the inner city without having to be into the midst of the inner city happenings. They didn't have to deal with traffic. They didn't have to deal with people, nothing. Tunnel straight to the businesses, drop off the cargo. Anything needed was picked up, taken back to the river, could be loaded back up, and leave back out of port as well. Well, back in the days then, just like now, these ships, when they go out to take cargo, They could be gone for weeks, months. These are long voyages. Even with whatever crew they would acquire, when they would go on these months-long journeys, a lot of the times, said crew member is probably only going to go on one journey.
Right.
Whenever he gets to wherever the destination is, he doesn't want to be stuck on the ship again for that long.
Correct. Yeah.
So whenever they would get to, say, Portland, and when everybody would get off of the ship, they would take their cargo, they get paid, then they go out and they're going to be docked for a few days. So they're going to go out, they're going to party, they're going to go do whatever it is that they do.
Yep.
Then they don't want to leave. The ship's still got to leave and take the cargo back. They still got a job to do.
But they don't want to.
Well, no. Now the ship captain or whoever else, they got to come up with another crew.
I got you.
Well, if there's nobody standing at the docks looking for a job at that point in time, what do?
Go by themselves?
You got to find crew members. That's where the Shanghai Tunnels got their name. They would pay people they called it Shanghai. So they would find, most of the time, they looked for able-bodied younger men that are alone at bars. Well, they would go buy them a couple drinks, go ahead and make sure they get good and drunk, and when they do, they would lead them into the basements, knock them out, or if they're drunk and passed out, whichever has to transpire, and they would drag them back through the tunnels back to the ports, and the ship captains would pay $50 a head for a crew member. Load them up on the ship leaves, they wake up, now they're part of the crew. They're given two options at that point in time. You can work and you can be part of the crew, or you can starve because we're not going to feed you. So if you didn't want to work and you didn't want to do the slave labor that was there, then you're going to starve. If you worked, you ate.
I'd choose option 3.
Jump. There were people that did it, apparently. As the rumors of all of this happened, the men would get to where they wouldn't go out by themselves, or they were very cautious of how much they drink, or don't go into the basements with people you don't know. Don't put yourself in a situation where you're going to be shanghaied.
Right.
So the people that were doing the Shanghai, they got $50 a head. They were still looking for people to take back for slave labor. So once they couldn't get men, who did they start taking then?
Women. Children.
So they would start doing the same thing for women. And the women, a lot of them, some would become crew members. Some would be taken back just to be sold into sex slavery. There were also women that were getting shanghaied. And apparently these tunnels they give tours of them and stuff till this day. But apparently there's a lot of stuff in these tunnels. There's miles of tunnels down there. So some of the women would never even make it back to the ships. Some women, when they were captured, they got kept in cages and prostitution rings in the tunnels.
Wow. So they were making more money on the women than they were the men.
At a point in time, I would think so.
Yeah.
There were...
$50 per head for the ship. Then if you were to sell into any kind of ring of some sort, that's however much they'd pay for that too.
Right. Well, and I'm sure some of the people that were running these rings were probably the people that were kidnapping also. So there wasn't it was just take them down there and keep them for whatever. I'm going to see if I can find some more pictures to actually post, but some of the bars even had trap doors because the women were getting pretty privy to what's going on as well. So they would do the same thing. They installed trap doors at some of these bars. So they would lure the women, even though they wouldn't get to a point of being able to be kidnapped per se. They would just get onto a spot where a trap door is, boop, spring the door, the women fall into a hole that leads to the tunnels. And that's where they would have somebody waiting on them after they fell in the hole, a hole they couldn't get back out of. There were even the Chinese gangsters in Chinatown. They also got into doing to begin with, they were running drugs. They would smuggle the drugs off the ships or to the ships through the tunnels. Well, they got in on starting to Shanghai people as well, and they would do the same thing. During Prohibition, the Shanghai Tunnels became an underground expressway also. Shanghaiers used the tunnels to transport alcohol to and from the different bars, from the ports back to the bars. They would also, this vast amount of tunnels that were there, they also had hiding spots. So the police made very frequent raids on the bars during that point in time. And the bar owners used those hidden trap doors and the access to the tunnels to have certain places to go hide their alcohol. So once the raid was over, workers went down there, got the alcohol, brought back up, were brought back to serving again. There's also the gangsters, when they would come in there to look for them, they would shuttle them out. They would help them escape through the tunnels to not be captured by the police, and the police leave, and they can just bring them right back in. They sit back right back down at the bar, have their drinks, and carry on about their day. With the nature of what all happened with these tunnels, it's no surprise that the Shanghai Tunnels are reported to be a very haunted place also. They give tours if you're around in that area. You can go take tours of the tunnels, and they do highly recommend that if you take tours, stay with your tour guide, because they're this pitch black. You can get lost down there and never be found, or be too late when you're found.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I know this is not the vast size of the catacombs of where the
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yep. So, but even with this, they say people, if you go try to wander off by yourself, you can get lost down there very, very easily. Some of the ghost reports is people say they see an Asian man walking past them in the tunnels. Nobody in the group, they're not with the group or anything, just goes walking by. There is a spirit down there that goes by the name, or they've named him Sam. He's responsible for turning off the lights, bar basements. Sam also likes to move things around in the tunnels as explorers walk by. One tour guide even reported while he was giving a tour, he heard someone call out the name Sam over and over again, and it echoed through the tunnel. Him and his guest of the group were scared, and one of the things that made him so scared is he knew the sound didn't come from behind him and nobody was in front of him. I mean, if we're talking about debunking stuff, this is a lot of tunnels down there. Who's to say it ain't somebody just hanging out for a scare? There are also other tunnel spirits, they call them, and some of them are tricksters, and they like to have fun with the tourists. They have reports of feeling. One woman said she felt her shirt get tugged on, like it was a child or somebody of small stature tugged on her shirt, and then she got tripped up. Whether something tripped her, pushed her,
or she just freaked out.
Yeah, absolutely. Another tourist remembered hearing the sounds of childlike whistling before he was thrown to the ground. After he stood up to turn around to find out what pushed him or threw him to the ground, he turned around, shined his flashlight around, and there was absolutely no one around him. There are reports of a lot of ghost activity all down the tunnels, and those are just a few of the ones, but most of all of the experiences that people have, they're said to be fairly friendly experiences. That is a pretty short and quick one also on that. It is when I found this one, I really wanted to talk on it because it was very, very interesting to me to find out about that. I had no clue about the tunnels that were there.
Brent, I'm going to say the Shanghai Tunnels, that's a pretty interesting place.
There's been places I found with a lot more information, but that is probably one of my, out of everywhere,
that's pretty cool.
It's been one of my favorites so far.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. A lot of history and dark history behind that too.
Yeah, very much. If I'm ever out that way, I guarantee you I will be taking a tour of that.
Yes. That would be pretty fun.
Today was a quick episode.
Yes, it was. But it was pretty cool. Learning about some of the places in Oregon. I think Texas is going to have some more paranormal aspects to it.
I would think so. With the vast cowboy, what's the words I'm looking for the cowboy
Wild
nature,
West
the
feel.
Wild West of it and stuff like that.
Yep. Yeah. Well, when people say Wild West, what's your first thought?
Usually for me, stuff like Texas.
Texas, Arizona.
Yeah. With that, good sir, we're going to say that the episode of Oregon is complete, and we will continue on with Texas next time.
Have a good day.